During the more than 70 years of Formula One history, a huge number of circuits have existed to grace the global calendar of this sport. And we've had as many permanent circuits as street circuits, semi-street circuits, and obviously each one of different sizes and distances. Most F1 circuits are 4-5 kilometer long, with Monaco and Spa being exceptions. But in motorsport of the past, these distances were ridiculously larger in Formula One circuits. And having tracks of 10, 15 or 20 kilometers was common in a Formula One that was very different from what we know today. And as a small tribute to a video we made when this channel was just a tiny idea in the mind of its creator, I'm gonna tell you about the longest circuits in the history of Formula One with a little top 10, so we can discover together the most insanely long circuits that have ever existed in the history of this category. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the top 10 longest circuits in the history of Formula One. Africa hasn't seen much Formula One racing lately. Only 2 countries have hosted a Grand Prix since 1950, including South Africa. And in 10th place on this list, the country of Morocco and the circuit that holds this spot on the list. It was built in the Diab region, near Casablanca. And it made its Formula One debut in 1958, which was its only appearance on the Formula One world calendar. It was a track built on the roads connecting the city of Casablanca and Asamour, and it was designed at the time by the Royal Automobile Club of Morocco. The circuit measured 7,603 kilometers, featuring an extremely fast layout with long high-speed sections. At the time, Stirling Moss set the lap record with a time of 2 minutes, 22 seconds and 5 hundredths. But it had the very bad luck that in its only Grand Prix in history, the driver Stuart Lewis Evans had an engine failure. His car ended up crashing and he died 8 days after that Grand Prix due to severe burns. This Moroccan Grand Prix and Casablanca circuit. In the 1958 World Championship final round, British driver Mike Horton was crowned world champion. But after that, the circuit was removed from the calendar and never appeared in Formula One again. But its brief appearance allows it to be, to this day, the 10th longest circuit in the history of Formula One. Nowadays, everyone knows the Interlagos circuit, one of the best tracks that delivers some of the best Grands Prix of the year. However, it's one of the shortest circuits, measuring just 4.3 kilometers in 2025. However, its original design was much faster and of course much longer. With 7,960 kilometers, the old and original Interlagos circuit takes the 8th spot in this ranking. This circuit was built in 1940 in the city of São Paulo as a permanent circuit due to the need for a safe and controlled environment for the competitions that took place in this region. It made its debut in Formula One in 1973, and this much longer version remained until 1980. Basically because Rio de Janeiro built a better complex with the Jacarepaguá racetrack. And thanks to the lack of safety at the Interlagos circuit with bumpy asphalt and in terrible condition. So they lost Formula One for 9 years, and to get it back they had to improve the facilities and completely upgrade the circuit. And to save costs and set up a facility much more controlled, they decided to shorten its length, reducing it from 7,960 kilometers to just 4.3, eliminating a large part of the layout. With this, Interlagos once again hosted Formula One, but it lost all its distance, its 26 turns, and at the time, the driver Jacques Laffite set the lap record. In 1979, setting a time of 2:28.76. And with 7,960 kilometers, the old and original Interlagos circuit takes the 9th place in this ranking. France is a country with a lot of history in the world of motorsports. And the circuit that holds the 8th place on this list is just one of the 2 that France has in this ranking. It was only included 4 times as part of the official and point-scoring Formula One calendars. But that was enough for it to secure the 8th spot as the longest circuit in the history of Formula One. The Charade circuit holds this spot, a semi-street circuit that ran through the roads connecting the regions of Auvergne, Rhône and the Alps. It was part of Formula One in 1965, 1969, 1970 and 1972. At 8.055 kilometers, it was one of the longest tracks in history. They stood out for their challenging, winding curves and spectacular scenery surrounding the mountains of the region. However, being near volcanoes meant it was common to find stones and ash on this circuit. It was on this track that Helmut Marko lost his left eye in an accident caused by a stone thrown up by Emerson's car. Fittipaldi. However, due to the track's danger, location, and France already having much more modern Formula One circuits, that's why the category left permanently. after the 1972 edition. The fastest Formula One lap was 2:53.04 set in 1972 by French driver Chris Hamon, and its top winner was Jackie Stewart on 2 occasions. Thus, it remained a beautiful, long, challenging and dangerous circuit. And also as the 8th place in our list of the longest circuits in the history of Formula One. On this channel, we've already talked a lot about the Reims-Gueux circuit in Germany, a track created with the sole explicit request to be the fastest circuit in history at the time, in that obsession that Germany had back then with superiority. This circuit was extremely long at the time, and its greatest length was 19 kilometers. Over the years, it was shortened multiple times. Until in 1959, which was the only year it hosted Formula One, it had a length of 8,300 meters. It was a track located on a public road that connected to Berlin, characterized by having 2 long straights, a heavy braking zone, and a banked curve. Absurdly monstrous, which made its only appearance in the world of Formula One precisely in 1959. As part of a political strategy? Nevertheless, the track was very dangerous with such absurd speed, not to mention that monstrous banked curve. So the 1959 edition was very problematic. The race had to be divided into 2 stints because the tires couldn't last the entire race. Due to the rain, overtaking was prohibited on the Peraltada monster known as the Wall of Death. And thanks to everything that happened in that race, Formula One chose to move to safer circuits the following year. Before racing again in such a dangerous place, Tony Brooks held the lap record with a time of 2:04.500 and won that race. And its only appearance allowed it to become the 7th longest circuit in Formula One history. In 6th place, we'll find another circuit that we already know well on this channel. It's the one that hosted the French Grand Prix. From 1950 to 1966, although not continuously, it was the first and original Formula One Grand Prix that this country had. And the circuit is Reims-Gueux, a street circuit created on the roads that connected these regions. This French circuit was an extremely fast track, with very long straights and only 7 corners, so the races in those years were insanely fast, and that made them extremely dangerous. The circuit was 8.437 kilometers long and remained in Formula One until 1966. Basically because Formula One considered it to be a very dangerous circuit, with so much speed and open fields. Racing on public roads, didn't they consider it the best in terms of safety? And better circuits and proposals directly from France started to appear on the calendar, which completely displaced this track. And in 1972, the circuit was permanently closed and racing was abandoned in this region of the world. The fastest lap of 2:10.302 was recorded by Paul Hopkins in 1967, and currently, and it's unlikely that will change, it is the 6th longest circuit ever raced on in the world of Formula One. The United States can now boast that it has 3 Grand Prix races in a single season. Multiple American circuits including Indianapolis, Las Vegas, Watkins Glen, Detroit, Long Beach and others have been part of Formula One. But in 1959, the racetrack located at the Sebring Military Airport would host the United States Grand Prix for the only time in its history. And today this circuit is widely known for being one of the gems of endurance racing. But at the time it was one of the best tracks in the United States with a length of 8.369 kilometers. The circuit was built on an airport. It was a very fast and challenging track and the drivers found it to be quite entertaining. That year saw Bruce McLaren as the only winner in Formula One history at this Sebring circuit. And as the fastest lap, the 3 minutes set by Sterling Moss's Cooper. However, due to the low attendance at this race, since the track is very far from society, the high costs prevented the category from ever returning to Sebring. And the date was moved to other circuits in the United States, but that single appearance on the calendar allowed its 8.369 kilometers to remain in 5th place to this day. From our list of the longest circuits in Formula One history. Monza is the temple of speed. The circuit with the highest average speed on the current calendar and in fact one of the longest circuits on the current Formula One calendar. However, this track, built in 1922 as a circuit to test Italian cars under certain conditions. Previously, and in its original layout, it was much faster than its current version, much more dangerous and above all, much longer. Monza entered the Formula One world calendar in 1950 on a track that combined the regular racing circuit we know today. with an internal oval, with beautiful, gigantic and stunning banked curves that together made up a total of 10 kilometers of track, which the Formula One cars had to race around at full speed. But obviously, because of these features, the track always had very serious accidents. The worst and deadliest Formula One accident occurred at this circuit in 1961, which involved a driver and members of the public who came to watch the race. Year after year, drivers consistently complained about the track's dangers. With numerous complaints and the 1961 accident, what happened from 1962 onwards? They stopped using the oval and its beautiful banked curves, and the circuit was completely redesigned to make it much safer, thus losing its impressive length, being reduced to 5 kilometers. But those appearances until 1961 allowed Monza and its 10-kilometer circuit to be ranked number 4 among the longest circuits in Formula One history. Currently, Spa-Francorchamps is the longest circuit on the current Grand Prix calendar with a length of 7 kilometers, the only one with that distance today. However, this circuit was shortened in the past and its previous length would completely overshadow the current one. And that's because from 1950 to 1970, the Spa circuit was twice as long as its track went through regions like Estabelo, Francorchamps, Malmedy, and had a distance of 14,120 kilometers. The original Spa-Francorchamps circuit was a street track that went through roads in the region connecting these towns. It was known for being incredibly fast, but it was also extremely dangerous as fatal accidents were common, which made the drivers complain at length about the danger of the track, but the event organizers simply didn't care. But it was common for a car to end up in a guardrail or for a driver to lose his life. And even on one occasion, a car jumped onto the roof of one of the houses surrounding the circuit. Precisely for this reason, because of the danger. In 1970, the last race was held with this 14-kilometer version. Formula One switched circuits, deeming the Spa track too dangerous. And to achieve its return and improve safety, the decision was made to completely shorten the track. This is the distance we know today, 7 kilometers. This allowed the circuit to return to Formula One in 1983. Notably, the winner of the last race on the 14-kilometer configuration was Mexican driver Pedro Rodriguez. But with that distance, Spa ends up taking the bronze in our ranking of the longest circuits in Formula One history. The circuit that takes second place in this ranking may surprise many. It's surprising that it's not first, considering it's a circuit that still exists, is massively large and used by many categories. Engine. Formula One has not returned to this track and it never will. Ladies and gentlemen, the Nürburgring Nordschleife, known as the Green Hell, takes silver in this ranking. The Eifel region in Germany was home to a track that hosted this Grand Prix until 1976. The Formula One track used until then measured an astonishing 22,835 kilometers. And it was a permanent circuit surrounded by huge forests with completely precarious safety conditions, so accidents that ended with the death of a driver were constant. And since the circuit was so insanely large, it took ambulances or fire trucks too long to reach the scene of the incidents, which obviously increased the risk of death. This was one reason Formula One abandoned this circuit. As you may recall, it was in 1976 when Niki Lauda had his near-fatal accident. So when Formula One left, the only way to bring it back was either to invest twice as much money to add more track marshals and ambulance access, or to shorten the circuit completely. And that ended up being exactly the decision they made, building a new 5-kilometer complex, which Formula One would use starting in 1984. Although the 22-kilometer circuit still exists and is used by many motorsport categories worldwide, Formula One will not return to it again. Now only part of the category's history. And of course, it takes the silver in this top as the second longest circuit in the history of Formula One. The number 1 spot in this top is by far the longest circuit ever seen. Formula One, which beats the Nürburgring by just over 2 kilometers, and in the same way as other spots in this top. It only appeared on the calendar in 1957, and that was enough to take the historic gold, which absolutely no one is going to take away. Ladies and gentlemen, the Pescara circuit in Italy hosted the Pescara Grand Prix, which was the 7th round of the 1957 World Championship, where this circuit was assembled on a section of public roads that connected towns in the Pescara region, such as Montesilvano, Capel, Villa Carmine, and many others. And the track, besides being monstrously long, was raced on public roads and through the streets of these cities. Besides being shaped like a slice of pizza, it was known as the mother of all dangerous tracks in the world. Its length was 25,579 kilometers. And the speeds reached on this track were very high, and obviously, people raced in very unsafe conditions. The circuit was added to the calendar as an emergency after the Belgian and Dutch Grand Prix were removed. But only 16 drivers competed in it, since many drivers refused to race on this circuit because it was so dangerous, including the Ferrari team. And originally due to the death of 13 people during the running of the Mille Miglia. Races on public roads had been strictly banned in Italy, but this circuit had received a special permit to hold the event. That's how the Pescara Grand Prix originated. But obviously, as with the other entries on this list, due to the absurd distance and the dangerousness of the track, after this event, it never appeared again on the Formula One world calendar. But that single appearance was enough for it to hold the record for the longest circuit in Formula One history, which it still holds to this day, and it's practically impossible for anyone to take that record away in its history. British driver Stirling Moss won the event and set the fastest time of 9:44.06, a new record. The Pescara circuit remains the longest in Formula One history. What about the gold in our top ranking? And ladies and gentlemen, with this we finish this special little top remake of the longest circuits in the history of Formula One. This is where I ask you, did you know the history of these circuits? Should we discuss them in more depth in another video? Would you like any of them, especially to return to F1 even if impossible? Let me know all your opinions in the comments section. I bid you farewell. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe, turn on notifications to know when I upload new videos, and share this with your friends. Also, I invite you to follow us on our Instagram and Twitter accounts. The links will be in the description of this video, and I'll see you soon for more content on your Skyline Racing channel. Thank you for tuning in, and see you later.